You know, I've come at this work not because I ever was going to be a politician, it's because I've always worked with kids and families. And for a long time I started working with 11 to 21-year-old pregnant parenting teens. And so many of them can take advantage of Treehouse and the services, supports, and the resources that they provided. And I have a particular young man who was born into my class in 1985. I don't think I've told you this. And his mom was a teen parent of mine. And I still have contact with many of those young people who were in the system themselves as young parents with children. And the best part was he actually was an education specialist in Tacoma at Stadium, one of the high schools that he went to. And support means all the difference in the world. And right now you're gonna hear people tell you there's no money. And the reason is everything that we do, everything that you do is discretionary income. Entitlement is education, entitlement is infrastructure, but child welfare, juvenile justice, early learning, DDID, developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, all of those things are discretionary income. And they're always the first things to go when we're short on cash. So one of the things I would ask you to ask members is, what are we not going to do in order to take care of our young people and to take care of our children and to take care of our families? Because we cannot continue the way we're going and think we're going to have any kind of different outcomes. And unless and until we invest in early care and education, unless and until we invest in child welfare, unless and until we look at our juvenile justice system, unless and until we look at corrections, all under my portfolio, we're not going to make a change. And so what I've been saying to people is if you're pissed off about corrections, then take a step back and do prevention in juvenile justice. And if you're pissed off about juvenile justice, take a step back and do something in the child welfare space and prevention. And if that pisses you off, then step back and do early care and education. And if that pisses you off, then for God's sakes, work with kids and families, because that's the thing that's going to change the trajectory. And it's not always about removing children, but it's about supporting kids and supporting families. And sometimes that means reunification, and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it takes a long period of time, and sometimes not so long. But without access, without opportunity, and without voice, we're not going to make a difference. And I think the last thing I'll just say is I know I walk with privilege. And I try to use that privilege every day, you know, not to be a voice for other folks, but to create space at a table. But I also need you to know that I identify, and I can choose to walk in a room and disclose. And so many of our young people and so many people speaking today don't have that same opportunity to choose. And by the nature of their skin color, by the nature of the clothes they wear, their language, that automatically puts them in a position of being othered. And that's what we need to disrupt. And so my job is to change our institutions that were never made or created to get people out of them. They were created to keep people right where they are, and they're doing a pretty good job. So I'm a bit of a radical and an old lady, and so I can say those kinds of things and get away with it. And I've been saying it, and I will continue to say that. So just use your voice. Stories matter. You don't have to know bill numbers or anything else. Just talk about what means the most and what you know from your own experience or what you see or what you do every single day. And I just, deepest gratitude. And you've got one of the best in Dawn Rains, I'm just going to tell you. Have been connected for a long time, but there was no worry when Dawn was appointed and was given that seat of executive director of Treehouse. There was no question in my mind that the work was going to continue. My only question is, how are we going to continue the work of Treehouse? So thanks so much for being here. And if I had $1 million, you all would get it.